What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Weekly Tool Talk. If you're new here, my name is Brian, and I try to do a weekly tool talk down here in my little office where we just sit and talk about tools. I also do projects, tool reviews, tips, tricks, and more. So if you're into that type of thing, I hope you subscribe. And if you do subscribe, make sure you hit the bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a video, because YouTube doesn't always notify you whenever I upload a video. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you hit the bell too so you can get notified. But today we're going to talk about the greatest screw that never was. Now, I actually ran across an article in the Road and Track magazine that was talking about this screw, which is called the Robertson screw. And there's a story about how this ties into the automotive field, which we'll get into in a second. But I started doing some research about these screws, and I found that there is actually a book on screws called One Good Turn, A Natural History of Screwdrivers and Screws. And I also found that metal fasteners have been around since like the 15th century, and I did not know that. But screws were not actually common until like the 17th century, and they were used by gunsmiths for little components inside their firearms, and they were later mass produced about another century later, more specifically about 1864. Joseph Whitmore standardized these slot head screw, and in the US it was actually standardized in 1864 by a guy named William Sellers. And most of the early screws were slotted, square drive, and octagonal drive shape, which leads us to the story about how the Robertson screw actually came to be. The Robertson screw was invented by Peter Limburner Robertson, which is a guy that was from Canada. And the funny thing is, still today, the Robertson screw is the main used screw in Canada. In the world today, the main used screw is the standard screw is actually a Phillips screw, which was invented by John Thompson and Henry Phillips later on. But back to Robertson, he was actually at a trade show where he was trying to demonstrate a screwdriver on a slotted screw, and it slipped off and cut him. So he started thinking there had to be some kind of better way to make a screw, an easier way to make a screw, I should say. And he came up with a square drive type screw where it kind of tapers down in the end, which would be able to help eliminate the rounding off of screws, which was common and still is common today, which is one of the reasons why I hate Phillips head and slotted head screws. And thankfully today, I feel like the automotive industry has kind of went more towards torque screws, which I like a little better than Phillips head, but they're still not perfect either. But you was also able to use this screw with one hand. Since it was a square shape, you could put the screw on, use one hand to put your fastener on. But in about 1907, Henry Ford actually started using the Robertson screws in his Windsor factory in Ontario, Canada. And he planned on using them in all of his Ford factories because he found out that he could save like $2.64 per car back then, which today adds up to about $1,000 per car. So that's quite a significant price savings. But he wanted more control over how the screws were manufactured, and Robertson did not want to give over that control. So ultimately, Henry Ford just went with the standard fastener back then, which was the slotted screw. The Phillips didn't become more standard in automobiles until like 1936 when General Motors started using them in their Cadillac. But had Robertson and Ford been able to come to some kind of agreement, we would have probably seen the Robertson screw much exclusively used in the automotive field for a long time, maybe even today. I don't know. Like I said, Canada still uses them, and today there's so many different type screw heads out there that it's hard to keep up with. I mean, there's different size Phillips, different size slotted, there's even a Japanese standard screw, there's all kinds of different screw heads. But the Craig pocket hole screws are actually a number 3 square drive, so they're pretty similar to the Robertson screw. But I really find that interesting, and I like learning stuff about tools, and hopefully you like learning stuff too, because I'm planning on doing a few more videos like this. I'd like to do some more history of tools and stuff like that. I've got quite a few things planned, so definitely stick around if you're interested in that. But I appreciate y'all. If you haven't subscribed, like I said in the beginning, what are you waiting on? Go ahead and subscribe. Till next time, stay real.